Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Message Podcast. I'm your host, Paul James Caden, and today we are going to talk about one of the biggest signs of the last days or the last hour that is really playing out in our world right now. But it seems a lot of religious people are completely missing that sign. In fact, they're buying into it and believing it. And, this is something I've talked about before in some of my shows. And I've gotten a certain amount of backlash from people for this. And this really goes to show how deeply entrenched some individuals can become in a lie, especially if that lie has the label of their brand of religion attached to it. And what we're talking about here today is the level, or rather the number, of false prophets that are arising on the earth right now. And I really think this is a conversation where we really need to go back to the Gospel of Matthew, starting in verse 4, where Jesus says, "See to it that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name, claiming, 'I am the Christ,' and will deceive many. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars, but see to it that you are not alarmed. These things must happen, but the end is still to come. Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these things are the beginnings of birth pains." Now, what I want to focus on is what's written here in the beginning of verse 4, when Jesus says, "See to it that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name, claiming, 'I am the Christ,' and will deceive many." And it seems that he continues this thought when we drop down to verse 23, where Jesus states, "At that time, if anyone says to you, 'Look, here is the Christ,' or 'There he is,' do not believe it. For false Christs and false prophets will appear and perform great signs and wonders that would deceive even the elect, if that were possible." So I want us to notice this idea about many false Christs appearing, and people saying, "Oh, Christ is here, Christ is there. Oh, he's over here in this church, he's over here in this place." Because one of the major signs we're looking at when it's talking about the beginning of birth pains in the Gospel of Matthew is the appearance of false Christs. And we have this all over the place right now. I was just talking to a friend the other day, and we were talking about how many people are claiming they are Christ, or we are all Christ. And many of you have probably heard me talk about this before in my work, in my shows. And it seems to be an epidemic proportion even within the religion of Christianity. We have a lot of these evangelical charismatics saying, well, and I quote, "I'm a little Jesus." They say this about themselves: "I'm a little Jesus. I have authority over the devil, over the things of this world. Jesus gave me his authority to cast out demons, heal the sick, raise the dead. I'm a little Jesus, and you are too." And they're claiming all of these great miracles, but we're seeing them perform none. All we have to do is turn on Christian TV and we'll see a plethora of these ministers saying that they raise the dead, but this was over in Africa or some other far-flung country in the middle of nowhere, because these kind of miracles can happen because they're not polluted with the doctrines that miracles have passed away. So it's much easier to get them healed. It's much easier to raise the dead in these countries. So we hear a lot about these little Christs or little Jesuses, as they claim themselves to be, doing all of these miracles, and people believe it, yet we never see them perform any. And this says nothing about many of the people who are involved in the Kundalini practices, which is very big right now with yoga and awakening. The Kundalini, it's really having a resurgence, and people are leaving traditional religions for these Eastern philosophies that originate mostly around India. And we have a lot of these Kundalini teachers saying, oh, well, I'm Christ. Jesus said we're all Christ and you're Christ too. And by awakening the Kundalini within, we will become more Christ-like. So there's a lot of people claiming that they are Christ, claiming that they are Jesus. We have several people across the globe right now claiming they are the reincarnation or the second coming of Jesus, and some of them have very large followings. And so this is something we have to beware of. It's easy to look at the New Age or the Kundalini practitioners and say, oh, they're being blasphemous. Oh, they're claiming they're Christ. This is, an antichrist teaching. But do we really look within Christianity itself when we have ministers and priests and even individuals claiming, I'm a little Christ, I'm a little Jesus, I have Jesus's authority on this earth? And these people claiming false miracles and false visions and false dreams and prophecies, which brings us to the next thrust of this particular message, which are the false prophets. And that is the really big sign of the beginning of the end of the age that a lot of people are missing in the world today. And so if we look in Matthew chapter 24, in verse 24, it says, for false Christs and false prophets will appear and perform great signs and wonders that would deceive even the elect, if that were possible. And I would say to these many false Christs and false prophets, if we can turn on the television, if we can go to the internet and listen to somebody on YouTube claiming that they're a prophet, claiming that they're an apostle, and standing in the office of Christ, performing all of these miracles, and we don't even see them perform miracles, yet we believe it, and we follow these people blindly. How much more might people be deceived when someone steps on the scene and actually starts to perform false miracles right in front of their eyes? See, we're being primed for a grand deception, and we don't even see it coming because it has our religion brand stamped onto it. And thanks to the internet these days, people believe anything they read, anything they see, anyone with a strong personality that tells them, oh, I'm this, or I'm that, or I've raised the dead, or I've done these miracles over in another country. Now, you didn't see it happen, but I'm telling you I did this. And these individuals have a strong personality. Many will just cave in and say, yes, I believe them. He's a strong brother. She's a strong sister. This man is a prophet. This person is from God. This person is speaking the truth. When in fact they're not speaking the truth. So again, how much more will we fall for the lie when those miracles are performed right in front of our eyes? And notice what it says in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 24, in starting in verse 10. Jesus says, at that time many will fall away and will betray and hate one another, and many false prophets will arise and mislead many. So Jesus is talking about many falling away from the true faith, hating and betraying one another, and following after these false prophets and being misled. And how often do we see in the world right now individuals turning on family members, turning on other believers in God because they don't follow a certain prophet or believe in a certain doctrine or even follow a certain political ideology where they're told this is God's man in this particular political party. And we see many hating and betraying one another. False prophets arising and deceiving many. All we have to do is go to the internet and go to YouTube, and we can find scores and scores of individuals ranging from the ages of late teens to in their 30s and 40s and all the way up. All these individuals saying, I'm a prophet. I had a dream. I had a vision. God showed me in a vision. And they're all claiming, oh, I saw the rapture happening in 2021. I saw the rapture happening in the spring of 2020. I saw the end, the final trumpet being sounded this year, this time. But yet none of these prophecies come to pass. Or they're very vague prophecies. But if we go and we look at all of these people that are saying they have dreams and visions and God is giving them these prophecies all over the internet, none of their prophecies have come true, yet we continue to believe them and follow after them because they claim they are prophets and seers and call themselves Christians. And many Christians are deceived by this. And this is going to be a sore spot for many. But we have to look at what recently happened with the Donald Trump prophecies in evangelical Christianity. Those prophecies failed, yet many still get angry and say, how dare you speak against the prophets when you say you don't believe them anymore, or that they're false prophets. These are men and women of God, and this is what they've said. And you're being blasphemous by turning your back on them. And you're not a real Christian if you don't support their vision, their prophecies, their political views and agendas. But the very Bible they read in the Old Testament states that if a prophet says a thing and it does not come to pass, you will not fear or listen to that prophet. He is a false prophet. God doesn't say such and such a person is going to win an election and then turn around when that prophecy doesn't happen and say, well, the devil thwarted God's prophecy. That is blasphemous. That is a lie. That is making excuses why your false prophecy failed, and that is giving the devil or Satan more power than God, because he can usurp God's prophecies. He can make them null and void through some kind of trickery. So, ladies and gentlemen, what are we believing here? Who are we believing? We're being misled by these false prophets telling us lies. And yet we betray and we hate and we disown one another in defense of these liars and these false prophets and these false Christs who get on the internet and say, I saw, I dreamed, God gave me a vision. Or these people getting on there saying, oh, I'm receiving direct messages from the Father and he's telling me to tell you. And it's all conspiracy. It's all doctrines claiming they are Christ. We're all Christ. So here we go again with the many Christs rising up in the last days. Yet we eat it like it's candy. We devour it like it's good for us, but it's spiritual poison. And again, this might not be a popular thing to say, and there's some people that are not going to want to hear this, but these false prophets that were involved with the Donald Trump prophecies, their prophecy failed. And let me ask you this, if you believed or still believe in that sort of thing. What if Donald Trump were the Antichrist? Now, I don't believe that he is, but I've said in past shows I believe he could be a forerunner of such a personality. Because look how many people follow after him, because the false prophets give him their stamp of approval. But now what would happen if suddenly Donald Trump were elected in the 2024 election? What if he started doing miracles? Oh, after all, this is supposed to be God's man. How many people would be deceived by those false prophets following a false Christ, an antichrist, who is in a political position, which the Bible, Old and New Testament, seem to confirm that he will be a very charismatic political figure in the last days. So how many people would be deceived by that? Like I said, what if these false prophets and false Christ started doing miracles right in front of our eyes? How many people would swallow that poison and believe it and follow an antichrist because their false prophets told them to? Like I said, if we believe these people are prophets and apostles and having the authority and the power of Christ, and we don't even see them perform these miracles, how much more if they started performing them right in front of our eyes? How many would be deceived? How many would be deceived by a Donald Trump or someone else if they were an antichrist and started doing miracles and having all these false prophecies about them? Doesn't the Bible say something about the false prophet backing the Antichrist? So I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, we have to be careful. This is a very big sign that many are missing in this day and hour, and many will be swallowed up by it if they don't change the way they think, who they're following, and get a better understanding of what faith in God truly is. And now if we can go over to the Quran in Surah or chapter 2, verse 79, where it says, "Woe to those who write with their own hands, then say, 'This is from God,' in order to exchange it for a small price. Woe to them for what their hands have written, and woe to them for what they earn." Some translations say, "Woe to those who write the scripture with their own hands, then say, 'This is from God.'" Now there are several verses in the Quran that speak about religious leaders or religious people who write things with their own hands or speak things with their own mouth and say this is from God, when in fact it is not. And this just really backs up what we're talking about here. Because all of these people, all of these internet prophets, all of these charismatic preachers, all of these people claiming to be Christs and Jesus and seers and dreamers and visionaries, are they not writing the scriptures with their own hands or making things up in their own mind, which is another way this could be interpreted? They're coming up with things on their own and then saying this is from God. And they're speaking falsities. They're speaking lies. And judging by the many failed prophecies and twisted doctrines and teachings that we're seeing coming from the pulpits and seeing coming over the internet, there are many people who are writing scriptures and coming up with ideas in their own minds, or writing these things with their own hands, then presenting it to gullible people and saying, this is from God, and people believe it because they're being told it is from God, it is from Christ, it is from Jesus, and because it has that name stamped on it, they believe it. Completely dismissing or forgetting the fact that Jesus himself said that many false Christs will arise and many false prophets who will deceive many. And the Quran echoes this sentiment in many verses. The false believers, the false teachers, those who will lead others astray through their lies and their deceptions. And I find it interesting that it says in the Quran, woe to those who write with their own hands and then say this is from God in order to exchange it for a small price. And what is that saying? In the original Arabic, and this is fleshed out elsewhere in the Quran, that they're distorting the truth. They're making up their own truth. They're lying. They're being deceived and deceiving. And they're exchanging eternity for a small price, for this world's fame and fortune and followers and likes. And how many of these people are receiving donations and money and support for their false messages? And they love it. They love the attention. They love the popularity. They love being looked at as a leader among, the group that they're leading, the people that they're teaching. So they exchange true faith. They exchange eternity with God in the hereafter for a small price of fame and fortune in this world. And I'll tell you something, folks. It doesn't take a very long, hard look to realize and see how many of these people are doing just that. And this is who we follow, because they have the strong personality. They claim to have some kind of authority. They claim to have some kind of inside information from God that the rest of us don't have. And this is a very clear reality why the Quran tells us to associate no one else with God. Muslims are very stringent monotheists, one God, and our allegiance belongs to him. And that we should not marry any partners to God. And that just doesn't mean false gods or idols, but in the Arabic that means anything: money, career, fame, other people. And look what we do in the world today. And this is why we fall into so many problems and start following after so many false teachers and false doctrines. Because especially in Christianity, we're always looking for that special teacher, that anointed prophet. Many Christians are always looking for that person who has the truth. They're always looking for, the modern day Moses or the modern day Jesus, or the person who is going to give them the message that delivers them from tyranny or delivers them from false religion or whatever it might be. And they look to everything and everyone except God. So they're always associating with God partners. Their pastor, their priest, their chosen prophet, their chosen internet prophet, their chosen political candidate who is surrounded by false prophets. And this is how and why we fall into so much religious error in the modern day. And this is why those false Christs and those false prophets will mislead and deceive many. Because many will follow after anything or anyone except God, because they say they have faith. But do they really have faith in the God they cannot see? They always need that physical representation of their God, a man, an idol, whatever it might be, someone claiming to be a prophet, someone claiming to be Jesus, someone claiming to be a little Jesus, someone claiming to be a modern day apostle, someone claiming some special authority. They need to follow after something or someone they can see. But doesn't even the Bible say, blessed are those who have not seen but still believe? Doesn't it say the same thing as the Quran? Our allegiance belongs to God, not these people. Not people on the internet, not people in mega churches, not people claiming to be modern day prophets with their visions and their dreams and their predictions that never come to pass. And so at the end of this message, we can go right back to the Gospel of Matthew and look at those verses about false Christs and false prophets and see how it is happening. The beginning of those birth pains are beginning in our world. And many don't even notice them. They're embracing them. They're taking them as truth. They are falling away from the true faith, as Jesus said. They are embracing the lie, and they are hating those and betraying those and breaking away from those who don't embrace the lie with them. And I ask each and every one of you listening to this podcast today, is this the group you want to follow? Is this the group you want to belong to? Do you want to follow their Pied Piper, as I used to call these false teachers in the past? Well, you know the story of the Pied Piper. All of the rats followed him as he played the flute, and he led them into the ocean where they all drowned. And unfortunately, this will likely be the end or the outcome of many who follow these personalities. They will be led out to sea and drowned in the falsehood of these deceptive teachers and preachers and self-proclaimed prophets. As the Quran says, do not associate any partners with God. And the more I look at the world, the more I look at religion, the more I go back to that verse in the Quran and say, you know what? Maybe this is really solid advice. Because look what so many people are doing and who they're following after. because there's a sect of religion and Christianity out there that tells them to listen to the prophets, seek out those special teachers, seek out those special new prophets in the end days. And why do they tell us that? Because they themselves claim to be special teachers, special anointings, prophets and seers and visionaries and apostles called by Christ. And Jesus called many of them up to the seventh heaven and gave them some special mission here on earth. And we're just being misled by the false Christs and the false prophets. So, folks, I hope, as I always say at the end of all my podcasts, I hope you got something out of this today. I hope it will make you think. I hope it will make you reevaluate what you believe, who you're following, what's happening on the world scene. And I hope it will make you realize that just because so many other people are running after and following after a certain personality or preacher or prophet or politician doesn't mean that you have to do it too. In fact, if we really think about it, and many of us know this on some level of our own being, that usually whatever the masses are running to is not something, or let me word it this way, usually what the masses are running to is something we should avoid. And I've noticed those masses, especially in the woke movement, they call everybody else sheep. But they flock around in great herds around their chosen teachers and doctrines and prophets and politicians. And they all sound off, bah, 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 but everyone else is a sheep because they're not following their herd. And generally, that is a big tip-off. Where the masses are running to, no matter what the masses claim, is usually something we don't want to associate with. It's not good for us. We should stay away from it. So again, I hope you've gotten something out of this show today. I appreciate all of you who have listened. I hope it will make you think. And so until next time, stay safe, stay in the light, walk with God, and may I add to that, give your attention and your allegiance to Him. Don't associate partners with God. Because there's a lot of people out there and a lot of religious sects out there that want to marry themselves, their religion, some philosophy, some prophecy, or some other erroneous thing to God and then tell you to follow it. And it's polluting people's faith. It's leading them astray. And I believe we're being set up for a major fall of the last day, the last hour that will one day be coming upon the earth, maybe sooner than we think at the rate in which we're going. So again, I thank you for listening, and again, stay safe, stay well, and I will talk to you next week here on The Message.